Okay, Bolton Board of Health, we're calling the meeting to order. We're recording tonight as there's been so much public interest in spraying programs. If you remember, Bolton voted several years ago not to spray. However, I guess if the need arises to a point that we claim an emergency, we'd probably try to do something. However, in between, before we got to it, the state seems to have taken control, as they often do, and have sent a notice between tonight and or the next couple of days. They're going to spray a section here, including the eastern part of Bolton. Now, this is the state taking control, and we don't have much to do with it. And I say it's sort of frustrating at times, where you're sort of trying to handle things to the best of our ability, work with our community, and then the state takes over. Do you all have this news release showing the map?
I've seen it.
Okay, well, the map basically comes down across 495 out of Harvard, including the big Delaney Reservation up there, going just to the west of Bolton Center and up over Wattaquatic Hill, headed towards Clinton, with Wattaquatic Hill all the way to Bolton Station being included. So this will include the center of town and most of South Bolton into Berlin. And I'm not sure at this point what there is for us to discuss or do. The subject has been, should we be trying, the schools did some spraying earlier, but it was very local, just around their playing fields, and I don't think it would have affected anyone else. Excuse me, affected anyone else. At this point, where do we go, gentlemen? I don't think we have much to do we?
Well, Chris, you started off by saying that the town voted not to spray, but I think really the vote was not to participate in the mosquito control program, which,
Very true.
which had a lot more to do with mosquito reduction beyond spraying. But I think it did seem like the primary concern was environmental impact and the spraying aspect of any program.
I agree with you completely, because they're saying they would spray one person's backyard, and obviously spray is not going to stop at a lot line. So everybody could be impacted, even if they did not want to. And as I say, we've sort of gotten overruled by the state that's looking at a large program and not doing it by towns or by properties, but rather by an area that they think is at high risk.
But it's still moderate on the map. Like, I looked at today's map, and all of Bolton and Harvard are moderate. I know we abut critical, high risk. But I thought the state was limiting itself to just critical and high risk areas, and Bolton isn't listed as high risk.
No, I think you're absolutely correct, and I think what we're seeing is, so we're a partial, we're not a full aerial spray, and this is news to us today. This just came out today. I think whether you know or not, I think it's important for people to realize that we did test positive for a mosquito. It was about 3 weeks ago, or maybe more. By the time we were able to even mobilize any kind of plan, we'd kind of fallen out of a 2-week window, which even working with this Central Mass Mosquito Program, it's a nice group, and they're not like slamming the door in our face and saying no, but because we're not a member town, certain criteria need to be met before they really are even willing to step in. And my understanding from Tim and this program is that basically, since you haven't had a positive mosquito since this date, then they're not inclined to come out and do anything. which we're interpreting, whether wrongly is okay, then less than us, next time something does come up, we'll react much quicker. But they're not reading this as a high, as a high threat themselves. So, we really went into this a few years back deep and brought it to town meeting. We'll have a discussion tonight or at our next meeting about possibly bringing it back to the next town meeting again, because I think the stakes have increased a little bit since the last time this came up.
But how effective is it? Because all of the people that have gotten triple E so far
Are in communities that
are
have
in,
been.
yes.
Yeah. And that's, to me, that's the takeaway. So this program that Chris mentioned earlier, to me, the real appeal to it was that they work around, year round. Spring was almost their last default. That prior to that, they're looking for ways to kind of mitigate breeding grounds. Because again, this conversation's happened a number of times since I've been on the board. We look at, we've got this hog swamp, which is 60 acres. Now, understand, nobody aerial treats except the state, if I'm correct, that we don't, even if we were part of the Central Mass program, we can't have them fire, they don't have that capacity. So a program like that, would be near ineffective surrounding a property that large or a piece of land that large. Again, it's in my opinion, it's management. That's just smart management. So despite all this, we have for years run a very quiet program at DPW where we have dunks put into all the catch basins around town.
That's
because it's
great.
standing water.
Yeah.
This program would be a larger version of that. They look for more than just just catch basins, but.
And you can opt out of the spraying, I believe, too,
Yes,
with that.
yeah. But again, you can opt out, but if the truck's running up to your property line and turns the machine off, and there's a 2-mile-an-hour breeze, it's gonna
Right.
carry. I mean, that's part of what you want to do in some cases, but, it's a tough thing to wrestle with.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have hog swamp near our land, and we worked really hard not to use chemicals, and we've been pretty mosquito-free and have dragonflies and bees and whatever, so it's frustrating to me that we're now getting sprayed, but and we have no say in it.
Right.
With where people are picking up their exposure from, it's just because they live in that town, doesn't mean that that's where they were exposed. People travel and the incubation period is 4 to 10 days, so you don't know at what point they were exposed to the mosquito and where they may have been outside of their own town.
Mhm.
So I think we really have to rely more on it being found in the mosquitoes in certain areas and how many mosquitoes it's being found in. And found in other animals. We had a horse in Medfield that died from triple E this summer, hadn't left the property.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that's where the exposure came from. But with people, you can't say that as easily.
So I'm not sure if there's any action we can take, basically.
Well, what about letting people know? Because a lot of my neighbors aren't on social media or next door, and so I've let the ones know because I have heard there was a researcher from Tufts who said that sumithrin, which is in the spray, can be toxic to cats. So if you let your cats out, you might want to keep them in, So how do we get the word out to people just to let them know this is going to happen? And I know it's supposed to be safe for dogs, but I don't particularly want my dogs out when they're spraying. So is there a way to let people know who aren't on social media?
That's a very good question. I mean, this is, I think, to my memory, the first time the state's ever actually sprayed any part of Walton. Chris, do you recall any?
No, I don't. Not since mosquitoes of 1950s. Gypsy moths.
There
in
you
the
go.
fifties.
This information was posted to the town website.
Right.
The
But I-
town only posted to social media after it went to the website.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I would never think to go on the town website
Right.
to check, and the spring sounds like it's starting tonight and may continue over the next several.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, maybe that's the reverse
Can we use like the
911.
signs going through town that tell
Yeah.
us to pay our dog licenses? Like, could that be a way of?
But
Well,
we're not
it-
spraying the whole town.
Just, well, they're not spraying the whole town. But again, I think the real thing is how do you how do you bring someone's attention to it? To even just go to the website because it's a lot of information. And I do wonder, and maybe something to talk about is, the reverse 911, just kind of, just a heads up. I mean, because I
Yeah.
get that and would appreciate that myself. I mean, I've been calling my neighbors just on my drive home, like, hey, we're in that western part of town, it's gonna happen, so just keep your doors and windows shut tonight. And that's really, frankly, that's all you can really tell them. But to your point, it'd be nice to have fair warning to bring stuff in or cover it up. I mean, as I said, we just got notice of this today ourselves, so, and it's, the spraying part, the aerial spraying is entirely new to me, so, we're gonna need to figure that out,
Mm.
so.
One of those, I guess the state sort of feels it's an emergency situation, therefore they're only giving us 12 hours of notification.
Again, I wish I
That
had.
doesn't make it any easier.
I mean, it's
No.
a pretty serious disease. I know that the numbers aren't high of people and animals that die from it, but it's pretty bad if you're affected. So
Sure.
I think the more we can do to minimize the chances of exposure, and fine to say we should use spray on ourselves and not be outside, but there is still opportunity for exposure for a lot of people, and there are some people who have no choice but to be outside. So.
No, I agree, and a lot of, what was also driving us too is that, we've got a lot of soccer parents who are very concerned about the fields, and, again, a point I'd like to make since we're on camera is that, I think an email of some kind went out that our board said no to spraying, and that is we have never said no to spraying. It's, again, not our preference, I don't think, and we have brought a program to the town on more than one occasion, which the town has declined, so it leaves us kind of feeling a little hogtied in terms of what to do. And in moving forward, I know that we are looking to have time with the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator to find out what our, kind of our policy or plan should be.
I mean, some towns have just canceled extracurricular, anything that
Right.
happens in the evenings, and school districts have done that. And even after you get aerial sprayed or ground sprayed, they said it is not 100% effective, and you still have to wear long sleeves and take all the precautions. So, whether it's sprayed or not, you still have to take the same precautions.
Right.
Well, as I say, the school will spray the edges of the field, and hopefully they are also taking whatever precautions they should.
They are. I mean, I know that they've changed the athletic schedule. The Friday night football games on Saturday morning or afternoon now. I mean,
That's very good.
And I think the school put out a little blurb saying you should consider putting spray and treating your children's clothes before they come to school, even though we have sprayed. That's
Mhm.
what I read.
I'm Ali from Parks and Recs, the new coordinator, and we've been putting out the email to all the youth sports that
oh, good.
Kristen's passed on, but I know that we'll be asked again tomorrow, following this meeting, what the official, especially since the soccer fields are not going to be part of the aerial spraying, and they're one of the most vocal groups we have at the moment. They are shutting their practices down earlier with dusk times, but it's whether we have to, whether we should be advising them to do that earlier again, then slightly later than some of the stuff on the website that the state are recommending. So I don't know if between the Parks and Recs meeting that happens later and stuff, we should have some kind of official thing we tell the youth sports from us as the town, because I know both me and Kristen will get questions again tomorrow about what we should be doing for those people who've paid for their season, for their kids to play, and are very competitive and very into their sport and wouldn't want to be losing every time. But obviously, our hands are tied on what we can advise them.
Well, I think, I mean, yeah, a point that was made earlier, I think that there are things that can be done to reduce the risk outside of whether there's aerial spraying or ground spraying. The clothing, the dust to dawn, the repellent, and again, these are things that they're advising you to do, whether, even if you've been sprayed. We've talked about it a little bit. Again, since we don't have a town-wide program, we do need to work with you guys. We need to work with BYSA, for example. I saw one of the members of the group over the weekend and said, we're not adverse to you guys doing it. I'm not entirely convinced how effective it will be, especially, you've got a big open field surrounded by acres of woods on one side and residents on the other. But some people want it. They want it. It'll make them feel better.
Yes.
Likely, it would have made me feel better if my kids were still in the league, and so I think it's a function of getting there. Because again, who's going to do it? What's the funding mechanism? What kind of permission do we need from the town? What kind of endorsement do you need from our board?
And what level of threat?
And what level of threat triggers?
Yeah,
So
that's
if we are
right.
moderate.
Yeah.
And the state guidelines are like, well, then moderate equals personal protection. That's our recommendation, or common sense. Or if moderate opens the door to some kind of activity, then I think it's something we should certainly talk about.
Yeah.
So looking forward, should we basically commit to this fall, when everybody sort of settles down and gets back to work, perhaps have a meeting with ourselves, a representative of the selectmen, certainly, a representative of the schools, Park and Rec, and try to come up with a policy as to how we handle it on a local level?
Absolutely.
So to get, because I don't.
Yeah.
I know the school said they wanted to do it, and we said, we're certainly not gonna block you if you wanna do it. Off they went, but perhaps we should have a little more of a discussion than that.
Yeah.
So why don't we plan on that later in the fall?
And the sense I get from all of you is you're not necessarily in favor of spraying.
I'm in favor of spraying.
I have no issue on
Oh,
a
you are?
personal level of spraying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not for it.
Okay.
You think the threat is enough that we should spray?
Yeah.
All right.
Having watched we had a horse this year, and I had a horse in 2012, which when you look back at the statistics on when have been our worst years in Massachusetts, there's a weather correlation, and that's something maybe when you're coming up with plans that you can try to, in the beginning of the year, say, is this gonna be a year that is gonna be a high mosquito year? Did we have a warm winter? And are we looking at a fairly wet summer? Because those are the years that the mosquito populations explode, and we have a lot of triple E cases. So I had a horse that died in the 2012, and it's horrible. It's very sad to see them go like that, and there's nothing that you can do.
Were they vaccinated?
It was a recent import that hadn't been vaccinated, and that one was in Tingsboro next to a golf course.
Sure.
So we know where the exposure came from. That was, it came from overseas to here and was only on that farm once it was here. That's where it was exposed. So in people, it's 30% mortality, but the side effects, if you survive the virus, are pretty severe. So I'm all for the very limited risk of chemicals.
And how about the mosquito control program? I have a concern about wanting to spray if we don't take steps to
Right, well,
try
I
and
think
reduce
it
the
would be
risk.
wiser to have been part of a control program all along, and then you spraying as a last resource when needed, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so confusing though, because there's no real stats on how really effective it is. And all these towns, when you look at the map, that are part of that program are in the critical and high risk. Us and Harvard, you know, a lot of the other towns that haven't sprayed are not in that category. And I recently read some info about concerns that the spray is killing off natural predators like dragonflies, that would, so that, you know, the mosquito lifespan is 2 to 3 weeks, and so then they, you know, they're getting it from birds, and so a new crop is gonna keep getting infected. So you have to have really consistent spraying if you're going to eliminate each new crop of mosquito, and at the same time you're killing off natural predators. So it's really confusing because it doesn't seem like, I mean, maybe it has lessened it, maybe the cases we'd have a lot more without the spraying, I don't know. I just haven't seen any statistics on, like, that anybody's trying to keep track of any of that.
That's a good point.
I'd have to look through the state paperwork that I printed to see if they have, I know that came up in the call today, what are the stats, and there were other links that were on there that if you did go through it, there might be
Okay,
something.
because I've been trying to find them and I can't find anything. Okay. But if you're going to introduce some kind of program, again, I think it would be, you would need education about the preventatives and, like, you know, how they try to treat without spraying before, like, you really have to educate the town about it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, and we have done that. You know, we've had the director of the program in to, you know, our public
Oh,
meetings to
yeah.
discuss it, and then
And at the town meeting.
and
At the
had a
town.
pretty good explanation at that
It
town meeting.
was
So
a pretty good turnout, if I
Yeah.
remember right, and a pretty strong response against
yep,
Yeah.
the last time it was brought up.
yep.
Yeah, the whole topic of spraying just
Yeah,
sets people.
And there's a lot more to it than just that. So
yeah.
Okay.
All right, move
So-
on to our other business.
yeah,
Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for your
yeah.
input.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And you think there will be a way to let people know, or?
We'll work on
Well,
that.
again,
have
since
a
we just
meeting.
found this out today, I mean, again, what I'd ask you to do is call any friends and neighbors you have in the area. If you go to, Kristen, where is this?
That is what was
Is
posted
that the
on
Bolton website?
the town of Bolton
Okay.
website and the Board of Health website, so if they
Okay,
subscribe to
so
the
it's
emails,
there.
they got it.
And I wonder how much on the evening news
Oh,
this will be.
Oh, absolutely.
Hopefully,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was.
I posted the maps on Facebook, and next door, but like I said, a lot of people don't
Right.
go through that.
I do know that the emails, because that's what that posted first.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.